Top 3 Rise Against albums. Oh, I know you guys care about this one. If you guys were following me way back on the channel, you would know that I did a lot of Rise Against covers back in the day because they were my favorite band. And honestly, I think they still are. Every single time a new album of theirs comes out, I'm never really disappointed. It's always like, oh, sick, this is so consistent and I'm happy. It's like comfort food. Top 3 Rise Against albums. Fuck you, bro. I'm actually gonna just make a tier list because I feel like that seems a little bit more fun. All right, here we are. We're doing a Rise Against tier list. We're gonna just do this pretty quickly. So first things first, let's start off with their first album in 2003, Revolutions Per Minute. This is the cover art for RPM 10, the remaster with a bunch of like different demo tracks and stuff. But for all intents and purposes, let's just rank it as far as like Revolutions Per Minute goes. This album is a fucking banger, dude. Black Masks and Gasoline, Heaven Knows, Halfway There, Like the Angel, Voices Off Camera, Blood, Red, White, and Blue, fucking Torches, Amber Changing. There are so many good songs on this record that like I can't help but feel like this is an easy S. Revolutions Per Minute is an easy S, which is insane for like a first attempt. Next we have their actual first album, The Unraveling. I bet so many of you just now were like, Chris is a fake fan, he got the album layout wrong, and you left a comment letting me know how dumb I was. And now you are the stupid one. Bet you feel stupid. Bet you feel dumb. The Unraveling, their first album, circa 2001. This is a solid album, especially for a first attempt. This is a solid B for me. My Life Inside Your Heart is like a really, really strong track specifically, and it feels like a kind of like foreshadowing of what they would later sound like. But there's also a lot of great stuff on this album. Specifically, I just the title track, The Unraveling, is great. I think 6 Ways Till Sunday is like a really hidden gem. Alive and Well is wonderful. Great Awakening is really punchy and energetic. Ever Changing is a deceptively beautiful song. And even the bonus tracks like Gethsemane and Join the Ranks are really solid as well. Now, the reason this isn't an A or an S tier for me is just songs like Weight of Time, 1000 Good Intentions, 3-Day Weekend, and, you know, The Remains of Summer Memories they're not bad songs, but they don't really impact me in the same way that other tracks in future albums do. Not a bad album, but I like listening to it a little bit less than some of the other ones on this list. Next up, we have Siren Song of the Counterculture. Their real first album. I'm just kidding. We're done. Siren Song of the Counterculture is easily an A-tier album. I feel like the worst song on this album is To Them These Streets Belong, and it's still kind of an awesome song. But this is banger after banger after banger. State of the Union, The First Drop, Life Less Frightening, Paper fucking Wings, my dude. Blood to Bleed, Tip the Scales with its incredible, like, you know, intro guitar that kind of, like, continues to carry throughout the entire song. I think Ever Changing in acoustic form is way better than Swing Life Away, but Swing Life Away is incredibly iconic. It was definitely one of the first songs that I learned how to play in its entirety on the guitar. Now, we're going to do something a little different here. We're going to add row above for God, because that is the only place that The Sufferer and the Witness goes. I think Sufferer and the Witness is fucking perfect. This is the album that made me fall in love with this band, I think. To this day, I really don't think there is a Rise Against album that even comes close to this one as far as like catchiness of choruses, you know, like just overall structure of the songs. The energy of Behind Closed Doors and the hastiness and the aggressive speed of Worth Dying For. The sheer catchiness of like The Good Left Undone. The way that Prayer of the Refugee, one of their greatest songs ever, just transitions so neatly into drones. This is also the first record that I can remember coming from them that felt like they were really experimenting with shit. You have a song like The Approaching Curve, which is basically a spoken word poem with like a strong punchy chorus that kind of trails and meanders into this weird poetic lyricism that is kind of about this relationship falling apart, but is also kind of about something more the more you listen to it. And the imagery that it paints, especially at the very end of the track, is like very grim, but also very interesting. The acoustic song, while not as soft as Swing Life Away and Roadside, just feels very interesting. You've got string instruments, and you have a woman kind of contributing background vocals and contributing to the chorus. You also have Survive rounding out the entire track listing, which is just like one of my favorite songs ever. I've always been a really big fan of Rise Against lyrics because I feel like they're very politically charged while also having an air of poetry to them that I don't feel is really available anywhere else. You could interpret the songs just as easily being about political issues as you could about being, you know, about you or the things that you're going through. They're somehow very pointed and specific and also nebulous and relatable at once, and I think that's a very difficult thing to pull off, and they did it in spades with this album. And the riffs on this one, especially with Prayer of the Refugee, Injection, and Under the Knife, are just fucking primo shit. Next we have This Is Noise. I'm not gonna lie, I don't really listen to this one a lot. I'm probably gonna put this in like maybe D. I think songs like Obstructed View and But Tonight We Dance, as well as Nervous Breakdown from the Lords of Dogtown movie, I think they're fine, and I think they're enjoyable enough, but they rarely find themselves in my playlist rotation, and when they do, I'm typically more eager to hear something else from that band than this. And Fix Me and Boys No Good just don't really work for me at all. Next, we have Appeal to Reason. This is a controversial one. This is when they started to get objectively a little bit more radio pop. You know, this is when they started to become more popular and when they started to be played on the radio a lot more and more. By the time Appeal to Reason came out, I think everybody knew who Rise Against was, but it was Savior that really put them on the map. I think Savior really exploded. And it was a song that wasn't even supposed to be on the album originally. It was almost cut, which is kind of crazy to think about, because that's the song that everybody knows. But you know what? Despite the more poppy choruses and more formulaic songwriting here, I feel like there's really good shit on Appeal to Reason. While I'm not the biggest fans of the softer songs like Audience of One, and I do feel like Collapse, Post America, and Kotov Syndrome sound a little bit samey, like I often confuse those songs with each other, I do feel like there's some pretty strong choruses here. Strength to Go On. The Strength to Go On is wonderful. Savior is actually a good song, as well as Re-Education, which is personally my favorite on the album. Long Forgotten Sons has a really catchy chorus that I can't help but sing along to whenever I hear it. And Entertainment is just like a really fun little song with like circus themes to it. They even use like some of the circus, like the stereotypical circus song as like the bridge. Hero of War as an acoustic ballad isn't, in my opinion, as strong as Swing Life Away or as catchy, but it is a lot more powerful as far as what it's, you know, about, the subjects that it's, you know, touching on. But honestly, one of my favorite Rise Against songs ever is on this album in the form of Whereabouts Unknown and Elective Amnesia, the iTunes like bonus track. It's a shame that Elective Amnesia is just not on the base version of Appeal to Reason, because I think it's really fucking good. The way it builds and builds, and it just has this chorus that really, like, explodes. It just feels like it's just a damn good song. But overall, I really like Appeal to Reason. I think it's a B, you know? I think it's a solid B. Endgame, I think, is the one that I'm most mixed on. I think Endgame is a really strong album from a thematic point of view. I think the things that these songs are about are really interesting, and the way that they're written lyrically, specifically from a lyrical perspective, are interesting. I still feel like Disparity by Design is like one of the best Rise Against songs ever, because it's so clear in its messaging, while also being creative in its structure and catchy in its delivery. You also have Satellite, which is another catchy banger, and Architects. You have really strong guitar work on things like A Gentleman's Coup, and you definitely hear the bass player really hammering it home on the title track at the end of the record, Endgame. But I do think there are certain points in certain songs where the songs feel a little bit lazy. I think Wait For Me is a pretty bland song, if I'm being honest. And even one of the songs that I really like, A Gentleman's Coup, I just think has a really lazy bridge. Help Is On the Way and Make It Stop are really powerful in their delivery, but they also feel a little bit too radio for me. Overall, I still listen to this album a lot, so I would say I like it a little bit less than Appeal to Reason, but not really that much. I also need to just clarify, there are no bad Rise Against albums in my opinion. I really don't think there's a single one. So if something's really low on the list, it literally just means it's something that I listen to a lot, but not as much as everything else. Next up after Endgame, we have The Black Market. I feel like The Eco-Terrorist in Me is a particularly strong track, specifically because of how much it borrows from their older sound while still feeling like it's structured in a modern framework. Zero Visibility has some great riffs on it. People Live Here, I think, is the first really strong acoustic ballad since Swing Life Away. Bridges, I think, is a wonderful song as well. Sudden Life, while being a softer song by Rise Against standards, is still like a really catchy number. And then the title track, The Black Market, being about, you know, songwriters kind of digging deep into their own hurt over and over again for the entertainment of others, and how that, like, that's very relatable, I think, at least from like a performer's standpoint. I don't know if it's relatable to everybody, but like, I mean, I found it relatable. And Tragedy Plus Time, while very corny, I will admit, is just a really positive song. It's really hard to dislike The Black Market because it just feels so optimistic. It feels like it just wants you to feel good, which is not necessarily something that's not present in every single Rise Against album, but I definitely felt that most with this one. The Black Market is above Endgame. No, you know what? I'll put it here. I'll put it there. I'll put it in between In between fucking The Unraveling and Appeal to Reason. I really like the Black Market. Then we have Wolves. I'm not gonna lie to you, Wolves is the one that I listen to the least. I think the title track is great. I think the violence is great. I think Far From Perfect is really sweet. Morning in America is a softer song, but it's really catchy as well. And, you know, I personally really, really like Parts Per Million. You know there's something in the water. Really good stuff, genuinely. But tracks like House on Fire, Welcome to the Breakdown, Bullshit, Politics of Love, and How Many Walls don't really, I don't know, they don't hit me. I think there's something weird about the mixing on this record. Like, something is weird with the mix of these songs that otherwise I feel like if they were mixed a little bit differently or maybe handled differently, structurally speaking, I feel like this could have been a lot better of an album. But as it stands, it feels a little bit more one note than some of their other albums. It's definitely my personal least favorite. And you know what? I'm actually going to put This Is Noise down in E. I just don't think they're equivalent. I don't think Wolves and This Is Noise are equivalent. Next up, you have Ghost Note Symphonies. This is just an acoustic album with like a bunch of old songs done in an acoustic style. I'm going to put this along with Wolves. I don't really listen to these a lot. I think the acoustic rendition of Savior is really interesting, and I do think Faint Resemblance is a really, really great song for an acoustic rendition. But I do feel like the instrumentation could have been handled a little bit more interestingly. I feel like it's a wasted opportunity to have all of these fantastically written songs, especially because the lyrics of Rise Against are so good. To then just kind of have an acoustic album that just feels, I don't know, it didn't feel like they really went for it, you know? I felt like they could have been a little bit more grand with the way that they handled it. But I guess, you know, that's just more of a preference thing. Maybe their intention was the more stripped down approach, and it just didn't work for me as well as some other attempts. Next, we have Nowhere Generation, and this is one that I thought was really enjoyable. This is an album, I'm not gonna lie, this is one that I find myself listening to a lot more now. This is one that, like, when I first heard it, I was like, oh, okay, so this is, you know, this is fine. And then the more I listen to it, the more I find to like about it. I still think Rise Against is nowhere near their peak as far as, you know, crafting really catchy choruses. I feel like Suffer and the Witness was really their peak with that. But I feel like the songwriting on this one is really, really strong. This is another one that just feels very uplifting. I think the numbers, Sudden Urge, Talking to Ourselves, Broken Dreams Inc., you know, Monarch, Sounds Like, Sooner or Later, Middle of a Dream, and Rules of Play are all wonderful songs. I particularly love Sudden Urge and Rules of Play. Like, and the numbers is also just a fantastic track. I love the way it opens with that kind of like, you know, that fanfare type stuff. Forfeit is a decent acoustic track. I don't think it's as strong as People Live Here or Swing Life Away, but it's definitely stronger than some other acoustic attempts. And while I'm not the biggest fan of the title track, Nowhere Generation, I do think it is catchy, and I do find myself singing parts of it sometimes. Overall, Nowhere Generation is a really, really solid album. I would put it, I think I would put it in A. I think I would put it in between The Unraveling and Siren Song and the Counterculture. I think it's a really solid album. And honestly, sincerely, they just put out Nowhere Generation 2, and I would put that probably in between Siren Song and Revolutions Per Minute. I think Nowhere Generation 2 is actually way better than Nowhere Generation 1. The songs on that one are just wonderful. Like, specifically, you know, Holding Patterns and, you know, The Answer, Pain Management. Last Man Standing is a bit soft for me, but there's always that soft song on a Rise Against album that I don't feel as strongly as other ones. But that's my Rise Against tier list. I don't know who gave a shit about this. I don't know who wanted to know this, but you got it. So, you know, fucking bye, I guess.
One last thing I beg you, please, just before you go.